Hey guys, I'm Kevin Levrone, and I'm joined with my co-host Ron Harris. Ron, we have a special guest on episode number 11, MD Levrone Report. Rich Gaspari, welcome to the house, man. Thank you so much, Richie, for being here.
Great being on the show.
Yeah, man, we're looking forward to it. Ron, we got a living legend right here, bro.
Yeah, we did a show a couple episodes ago called Uncrowned Mr. Olympias with Flex Wheeler. Was Chris Cormier on there too? No, it was Flex, Sean, you, and Cormier, right? And
Yeah.
Rich could have been on there, but that would have been 5 people on the screen. Definitely someone who was knocking on the door 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row, almost had that Mr. Olympia title. And Kevin, you know what that's like.
I think we're even on that, or did you get 4 in a row, Kevin?
I got four, but not in a row. I would have been pissed if they were in a row.
I know you had 2 Mr. Olympias, right? You had both with Dorian and with Ronnie.
Yeah, man. It kind of sucks, when you're standing there and stuff. But all yours was with Lee, huh?
With Lee Haney, yeah, because that was his 8-year reign, So.
Hey, Ron. Me and Richie were talking, a while back. And I was like, Rich, you know what? You made it hard for us because Rich was the first guy that came out with the ripped glutes and everything.
Now everyone has to have them.
And the judges, they're like, well, if you didn't have ripped glutes, then you weren't considered as being in shape.
Right.
So thanks a lot, Rich, for that.
Yeah. We all contributed certain things to the sport, like I said, that was part of my contribution because at the time, you had Lee Haney, who was, really small waist and wide back and, 6 foot tall, and I'm 5'8", and trying to go against, this guy that had just like superior genetics. He was my training partner. If you guys know, he taught me a lot, really knowledgeable, on training, so when I moved to California, I was this young, hungry kid who wanted to, be pro. And I lived out in California to go after that. And Lee saw me training in the gym and he basically said, hey, Rich, I'd love for you to train with me. I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. He came in 3rd to Samir and he wanted to win that show. So he saw how hard I trained. So I became his training partner. So it was great because, became great friends, and he ended up winning that Mr. Olympia. And that year I won the light heavyweight, turned pro that year, and then helped him with his, prep for the Olympia, which then he won his first Olympia in New York. It was just funny. A year later, he never thought that his training partner would be knocking on his door. So my first try, I got 3rd place, in the Olympia. And then after that, I just kept trying to, beat him. Certain things don't happen. Well, as you know, Kevin, certain things don't happen in life, but you still,
I know.
Today, I appreciate everything I've done, everything I do, like between, my business and how I don't give up and I, focus and work hard is all attributed to, my bodybuilding career, because that, that gave me, I believe, everything that I have in being successful, and probably you feel the same way. It's like, if you can take what you have in bodybuilding and put it into any other endeavor, you're going to make money. You're going to be successful.
Hey, Ron, but what do you think, as sitting here and listening to Richie talk about his drive came from bodybuilding, but I would have to think drive that Richie, you had to have been, some people have, some people don't. And I always say that, there's 3 types of people in the world: ones that make things happen, one that watch things happen, and one that wonder what happened. But you have to be that kind of guy that makes things happen. I think bodybuilding was just that door that you saw that was cracked, and you just kicked that over. But tell us a little bit about, like, because we know Rich Gaspari, the famous Rich Gaspari. I know you. I mean, you were an inspiration to all of us. I was a kid sitting back watching, wanted to be. I remember you posing the final countdown, wasn't it? I mean, that was the glute thing. It was incredible routine. I remember it, man. But tell us about, you grew up in Jersey. What that drive mentality, where did that come from? Like when did that thing click and you said, I'm going to take this, I'm going to go into bodybuilding and this is it? What tell us about transitioning into the sport.
Well, I come from an immigrant family. Both my parents came from Italy, and my dad was a mason. He's a stone mason, cement mason, and I'd watch him every day work, hard when he'd come home from work, and he would always tell me, he goes, if you want anything in life, you got to work for it. You got to work hard for it. Nothing's given to you. Don't think you're going to get any handouts. And he kind of put that in my head. Like, if you want anything, you got to really work hard at it. Now, I work with my dad. I don't know if you've been doing any construction work. It's hard work, in the summertime, when it's like 90, 100 degrees, picking up blocks and bricks. And, I tried working for my dad. I'm like, I don't know how he did it for so many years. And, I said, well, I know he works hard, but I want to work hard in a different way, So when I was about 13 years old, a friend of mine, he collected like old Muscle Builder magazines. And I don't know, we went into his basement, we were playing, and I went in there and I saw these stack of magazines with a bench. And I started looking at them, and I started seeing these pictures of like Arnold and Franco and Frank Zane and Robbie Robinson. And I looked at these guys and I was like, holy crap, these guys, they look like superheroes. I can't believe people can develop muscle like that. And I was so intrigued by it. I like took some of the magazines and I started reading them. And that's when I wasn't even 13. I was around 11 or 12. I didn't start training until I was around 14 years old, and just started training with weights. And it was something that I felt I was able to do, because it was something, when you're weight training, it's something that you do on your own. It's not like a team sport. I wasn't really good in too many sports that I was in, but I felt like I excelled in training very quickly. I got strong really quickly. I was benching, when I was in high school, I was benching over 400 pounds and squatting over 500 pounds. And I was strong.
In high school?
Yeah.
In high school, yeah.
That's unheard of, man.
And that was natural when I did that. And I was in school, and I go, I must have something here, because I was really strong in what I did in the lifts. And I don't know.
Tell us a little bit about your body weight back then in high school. Like, when you graduated out of high school, how much did you weigh?
I was around 190, 195.
Oh, wow.
But I started growing when I went to college, my first 2 years in college. Then I was competing in high school, because I did compete when I was like 15, 16, 17 in these teenage shows. And the first show that I won, I was like 18 years old. I won a teenage show called the Physique. It's like, I don't know, it's like the Physique 82 and I was a teenager in that show. Went into that show, won the show. But then the kid who won the heavyweight that I beat in the light heavyweight, he went into the men's division and won that show as well. So if I would have went into the men's division as a teenager, I would have won that as well. So I said, man, I got something. If I was able to beat men out as a teenager, I should be good enough to continue on. And I just kept competing every year. And then when I got into college, I'd try to get bigger. And my first year that I went into the nationals, I came in 5th place against a really hard lineup as a heavyweight. I went into the show. The winner was Bob Paris. Second was Rory Littemeyer. Third was Mike Christian. Fourth was Matt Mendenhall, and I was 5th. Wow. So nice. It was, and all those guys turned pro. Well, Rory didn't turn pro, and who else didn't turn?
Mendenhall. He was incredible. He was incredible.
They were like incredible heavyweights. So who saw me in that show was Ed Connors. And he goes, you're too short to be a heavyweight. He goes, why don't you go into the light heavyweight class and, win that class? You could probably win that class. And that's how you can turn pro. So a year later, I was in college. I took a leave of absence from college, and I moved to California to pursue my dream to try to win the nationals. And then you had to win the Mr. Universe.
Yep.
Went into those shows, and going into the light heavyweight class, I ended up winning that show. I over dieted because I was training with Lee Haney, but I just over dieted because I wanted to go in that show about 198. I ended up going in like 186, but I was still ripped and conditioned enough to win that show. But what was really funny is I won the nationals by getting straight seconds, because all the guys in that class were getting first and thirds, and I won by my points. So I won that show by not getting one first place vote, but still won it on points. 2 weeks later, went into the Mr. Universe, the World Championships, which was in Las Vegas, and I won against this really tough guy. You may know him, Ron, Joseph Gromlis.
Oh yeah, from
I went against,
Poland. I think he was Polish.
He lived in Germany, but he was Polish.
Yeah,
huge arms, but he had, he's kind of wide waisted. He was favored to win that show. I ended up beating that guy. And I told you I was only like 188, but I was like just over dieted.
21 years old. I think you need to remind people too.
Yeah, I was actually, I just turned 21. So I went into, so Lee and I were training. I trained for that show. He moved to Georgia. I moved back to Jersey, and I decided to go into the Night of the Champions. But I told you I like over dieted for that show. So what I did is I just started eating again, and I went into that show from 188 to 215. So I went to my first pro show, putting on a lot of mass, which they thought I was on all kinds of shit, but it was just I filled out my body. And I came at a controversial second against Albert Beckles, who was also favored to win, but I came out of nowhere. I was a dark horse, like push him in that show. And then that same year went into the Mr. Olympia, coming in third place.
And who got second that year, your first Olympia?
Albert Beckles.
Okay. That was McCowie.
Albert. What year was that, Rich?
What happened was Muhammad McCowie.
That was the year before.
Second 2 years in a row. That year he came in fourth, and I beat him. And from that show, he retired. He was pissed that I beat him.
Well done.
So Rich, you were like 22 when you got in your first Mr. Olympia?
22, yeah, just turned 22.
Ron, that's unheard of, man.
Dude, guys are like 42 these days.
I don't know any athlete that was 22 years old that placed third in the Mr. Olympia. I don't. Lee Haney didn't. Anybody. You're the first one to do that so young.
I think I was probably one of the youngest to place that high at such a young age.
I mean, we had Lee Haney on, and Lee was talking. Me and Ron, you're right, Ron. We were talking about how young Lee Haney was, and when he retired, and how many years he had competed. I mean, but Richie, let me ask you this: what year? How old were you when you retired? Not like because you retired and you came back or something, right?
Yeah, I was 31.
Okay. Right.
And then
wow.
And then I took kind of a year off. Then you came onto the scene, and I try to make like this comeback. But then guys like you, Flex Wheeler, Chris Cormier, all these new guys that were coming that were like just crazy.
Yeah.
I was kind of, with having Kevin, I was burnt out, and I didn't realize till today I had a lot of issues with, I have like a congenital disc issue where my discs were all collapsing. So what's happening is like, even though I was training really hard, like I did, my body wasn't changing. It was actually regressing. So I was like, what the fuck's going on with my body? It's not getting better. I find out years later that I couldn't pound my body like that. So at around 34, I ended up saying like,
what did you contribute that to? You think were you a heavy squatter? You think that messed with this?
Squatted really heavy. I mean, I've had squatted over 700 pounds at my best weight, bench 520. I know you're strong. I was very strong when I trained behind the neck with 365. And I think a lot of issues I have are, I don't know if you have issues, but I have a lot of issues with my neck and my lower back from all the heavy training. To this day today, my neck gives me a lot of issues that I've been doing now. I've actually done stem cell treatment, which is really working well, because now you can put stem cells into your nerve, and your nerve will repair itself. And I'm seeing huge differences with
really.
Yeah.
How long you been doing that, Rich?
I just started a couple months ago, and I'm actually gonna do a couple more injections. So I've been doing traction and then stem cell injections into the nerve. Because what was always said, once your nerve is damaged, it's really slow to heal.
Right.
When the stem cell acts as your nerve tissue and starts healing it right away.
Do you think that would help, like for what do they call it when the muscles start? not deteriorate, atrophy, muscle atrophy.
Yes, it can help. It'll help any area that's damaged. Like say you have cartilage in your knee that's damaged. If you inject stem cell into your knee, the cartilage will start to rebuild again.
Yeah. Is there a special doctor that's doing that for you?
You got to go to a spine specialist. What happened was I was having tingling and weakness in my, it sucks when of course, getting older and you're not, you don't have the strength. So I'm like, what can I do to get this thing at least where I feel good? And that's, this doctor recommended using stem cell. So now I've been doing it and I see a huge difference in using stem cell. And if I tell anybody, you should do it if you have issues, especially guys like us that have been training so long. Nerves are inflamed, and when they inflame, they don't fire right. And, that's why you have all kinds of problems.
Yeah. I mean, Ron, as great as healthy as bodybuilding looks, because we eat right and all that stuff, like Richie was saying, I mean, the way he put all that weight on his skeletal spine and everything, you don't realize it, until you actually retire and you don't need all that muscle and your body goes down to somewhat looking normal. And then you start to feel all that pain just down in your joints and in your back and just all over, man.
You know what I was saying? Because Rich was known as one of the hardest bodybuilders of all time. If you had like a top 5, I don't know who you'd have in order or anything, but Tom Platz would be there, Dorian would be there, Rich would be there. I don't know who else. Steve
Andre Munzer.
I don't know. I never saw him train, but I often wondered, did that contribute to Rich's career being as short as it was? Because really, it was about 85 to 89 was his prime, where he was winning tons and tons of shows, and then the injuries started accumulating.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, I don't know, Rich, if you could have, held back at all on that, but would you have been able to have a longer career if you didn't train the way you did?
I think I would have had a longer career. I think what happened, as you said, Ron, I pushed my body to the brink. And then I thought if I had a little bit of a rest, I'd be able to come back, and it just wasn't responded. And guys like Kevin were coming into the picture. I'm like, crap, how am I going to beat this guy? So I wasn't the Rich that, when I was at my best, was not the same Rich competing in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I didn't look that good. I was like, then I should step down, because it's just my body wouldn't respond. It didn't matter what I was taking, how I was eating, how I was training. And I agree with you, if I would have stepped back, but maybe I wouldn't have been able to win or do as well as I did, because I felt I didn't have the superior genetics. I had to push my body, to the brink. I had to make sure I did everything when it came to diet. I had to make sure, through presentation, that I posed hours and hours to show my strong points, not show my weak points. There was a lot of guys, in my time that I beat that were great bodybuilders. I beat guys like Robbie Robinson, Bob Paris, all these guys that they were supposedly had better superior symmetry and shape, but I still able to beat them because I was better. I was a better presenter, because a lot of guys, they don't really put the efforts into the, the presentation. And I'm critical, even today's bodybuilders. I say, like, I think today we need to bring back where people really practice that presentation. Like Kevin, you had it, like you display your body, but it was an art form. Today they just go up there and they just hit shots, like, and it's not like it should be. And I think what made me win the shows is I was able to be a good presenter. So even if a guy was better, I went to head with Lee Labrada, and I beat him, going back and forth, and he was a great presenter, a great poser. So it even stepped up my game to pose even better to go against a guy like him. And, I'm critical on the sport today, because what I think is because they don't give reward or points for the posing, bodybuilders don't put effort into it. And I think that's a mistake, because what are you looking at when you're just looking at a bunch of meatheads just posing on stage? You want to see some type of, art form,
style,
each and every, and that's it. Each guy had their own style. When you pose, you had
personality,
your own style, and it's your personality. Today, you look at them and everybody's doing the same stuff, same front double bicep, and they transition like a robot instead of like
they do this.
Because
No one's cheering. They have to put their ear up and go, oh, come
Yeah,
on,
they
cheer
got
for
to.
me.
Yeah, they got to cheer people on.
Rich, they did
know.
score. They did score posing when you were competing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
me or Kevin.
No, I know in the 80s. I know in the 80s.
No,
into
they
the early
scored.
90s.
They scored Pose, and I think they scored Kevin as well. I think
Yeah.
that only happened the last where they didn't score the last 10 or 15 years that they stopped.
Right.
Why did they stop doing that, Richie? Any idea?
I mean, what I was told. Okay, say there's a great poser and the guy had a crappy physique. You can't have that guy with a great poser beat a guy who's great. And that's why they kind of said to score posing is really stupid, because a guy can be a great poser but have a really bad body. But what I think is if two guys have equal bodies and another guy presents better, he should be rewarded.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I think we all did at that time, in that period between my era into your era. We all went into that presenting our body, and each one of us had our own personalities on stage.
And we look forward to it. We look forward to coming back, because, I mean, Ron, even, you know, when me and Richie was out there, you know, not only did they judge the posing round, Richie, but they also judged the pose down, remember?
Yeah.
But that I thought was ridiculous. I mean, how do you judge the pose down?
Hey, it's entertainment. And let me tell you something, it had us fighting our asses off up there, though.
I think if you had each guy and it was by a point, was close, then you had a pose down, and the other guy showed, you know, more, he was more aggressive and he was out there really showing off his body, then that's how they would score it. And I agree with you, Kevin, that you should,
Especially if it was super close.
yes, it was super close.
See, they have something now, Rich. You can comment well on this because you're an IFBB Pro League judge. You have been.
Yeah.
They have a round now that didn't have in your day, called the confirmation round, where they basically do the whole judging all over again at the night show. You know, if someone got out, lost their condition or whatever, somebody can move up, people can move down. But, you know, do you think that's a necessary round? I've always thought it was kind of superfluous. Like, why do we need to do the judging all over again?
I mean, the only thing is, if a guy was really good at prejudging and then he changed drastically. I mean, I saw the Olympia, you know, I commentated the Olympia, and you saw the guys there. Rami was Rami. He dominated from the prejudging to the night show. He was there. But then a couple of the other guys really made changes, like William Bonac changed. Hadi Chopin changed.
Yeah.
If I would have scored it the next day, even though they had the confirmation round, I would have honestly put Hadi and William Bonac second and third, and then moved over Brandon Curry and, you know, Phil Heath.
Wow.
Less, because they didn't get as good as Hadi and William Bonac. They improved like drastically from the two different days. Hey,
Richie, you were actually at the show, yeah?
Yes.
I mean, Ron, you were there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think we're all thinking, you know, wow, Phil Heath might do it. From what you guys saw, right? Because I didn't make the show. I mean, do you think he has a chance of coming back and ever winning it again, Rich?
I still think he's superior in how he looks. He still wasn't the same Phil Heath in that show, and maybe taking off that long of a period, maybe that's why he was still a little rusty. I mean, you didn't compete for a long time. He went back on stage, and it was hard. Right?
It was done.
13 years. Was it 13 years, Kevin?
But that's a
12 years?
long time. But just, I think
I went to a slaughterhouse, yeah.
But just 2 years of not being on stage, I still think Phil, he was breathing heavy. I mean, he's a Mr. Olympia. He should have been flowing through that like nothing. And they worked him because they worked him. He looked like he was like tired. His back, you know, he still had a great back, but it wasn't the same Phil Heath great back. He still had issues with his stomach that he seems not be able to fix. Can he come back? I think he can. I mean, does he want to mentally? He's got 7 Mr. Olympias under his belt. He could probably make, right now, with the way you can make money with social media and, you know, business that you can make, I don't know if he needs to come back, you know? I mean, he's proven he's 7-time Mr. Olympia.
I know. What do you think, Ron? You think we'll see Heath again?
Personally, I don't think so. No, I mean, I think, I don't know why he didn't look as good as he did before. The chest fullness was down, the back fullness was down, still had amazing arms and legs. Condition was right on, but he's already had 2 hernia operations. I don't know what else they can do to fix that area, because every time, this is the second time we've seen it, when he gets winded, he can't control it and it starts bubbling out, that bubble gut. I know everyone hates that phrase, but you just can't have that. They're not going to accept that anymore.
And that's why he just, and they really were critical on him because he took that long break.
Mhm.
And I think they were even more critical on him. And what Ron said, his chest wasn't as good, his back wasn't as good, so I really don't think, mentally he's going to come back.
Mhm.
I think someone like a Brandon Curry, he's going to continually try to improve.
Mhm.
He's still young and he's hungry, and he had a Mr. Olympia, and I thought he looked great in the show. He still needs improvement on his side, like leg shots. From the front, he has a nice sweep, but when he comes to the side, he's still, when you compare him to like Phil Heath, forget about Rami, this from
Right.
the side, his legs look like horse thighs, and he just needs to improve. But I still feel like Brandon Curry is hungry enough to keep improving.
Mhm.
His physique, it may be hard for him to win, but I think Rami, he just came into that show just right. The stars were right. And he came into that show in shape. And let's see if he can do it again.
What do you think, Rich? You think he can do it again, or what do you think?
I mean, he's very unpredictable, maybe because now he has an Olympia under his belt. And, what's cool about him getting the Olympia, I mean, he flew back to Egypt and he became like a national hero, with a parade. And I mean, which is really cool for what he got. I mean, if we win the Olympic US, it ain't happening. You know what I mean?
I know, right?
True.
We don't get a key to nothing around here in America when it comes to bodybuilding.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool for that sense. I think it was cool that, and maybe, now that he won and he wants to keep it, but, so many years he's been trying and he's been unpredictable. He just came in this show just right.
Yeah. I have a question. Rich, you were such good friends with Lee Haney. You were training with them. I think didn't you even live with him and Shirley for a little while out there?
I did live with Lee. What happened was I was living in California. Lee Haney had a contract with Weider and he was living out in California. When I was out there, I kind of, I ran out of money and I was like, well, I'm going to go back to Jersey and train for the Nationals. And Lee, like, you're not going nowhere. You're going to stay with me.
Lee said he needed you.
Yeah, he needed me to train with him. So I went out and, he let me live in his, and it wasn't like some big house. It was an apartment.
Yeah.
It had an extra bedroom and I, slept in that room, and it was tough because, 2 guys getting ready for shows. Poor wife was just,
Gosh.
there, 2 guys. And, that's why I stayed out there. I stayed as his training partner for the last 2 months. I just lived with him and we trained every day. And it was, I have to say, it was one of my greatest times, And one thing, like I told you, is Lee really knows, training. He has a training certification that he runs.
Yeah.
But just like me, I'm really into supplements. He's really into the biomechanics of training, how to train a muscle and how to train it properly. And so he taught me a lot because when I, went to California, I was basically a power lifter. I just like lifting heavy and, throwing weights. With him, it was all about working the muscles properly, working your biceps, working your triceps, looking at the physique and assessing, my legs were too big, so I needed more shoulders. He goes, you got to cap your shoulders. You got to get your back wider. You got to shrink your legs a little bit. So it was more like he basically made me more aware of how to train my body to be more a bodybuilder than just a weightlifter.
Is that when you were at your biggest? You were like bulked up to 270 at one point?
I moved to California and I was around 265, but I was bulky. I was very bulky, and I looked more like I looked more like a power lifter. So when I went there, I was like going to Lee, I weigh more than you, and he goes, "You're just fat." He goes, "You're
fat boy."
You call me fat boy, and from that point, I started dieting, to lose the body fat, so that I was at a that I looked like you could see everything, because
Yeah.
I was living at that time in California near Woodland Hills. And it was funny because, you know, the magazine would always get extras to do photo shoots. Even if you were unknown, they use you for photo shoots. And they wouldn't use me because I looked too bulky. You know, one of my first covers was with Andreas Colling was on the cover of the magazine, and I was in the background, just, you know, like a kid doing a lift. That was like my first, you know, cover, if you want to call it a cover.
Hey, Richie, you know, I know you, I mean, you own one of the biggest supplement companies in the world, you know, Aspire Nutrition. I mean, you're the one that put bodybuilders owning nutritional companies on the map. I mean, you've certainly in a click you were talking about, you know, you're into the science, the approach to formulations and nutrition, but it all starts from nutrition. I want to ask you this, and then we'll get into the nutrition. We'll get into the supplement stuff later that bodybuilders, whatever they take or whatever, pre-workouts and stuff. We had Lee Haney on, but one thing we didn't do, Ron, was ask Lee about his diet, because I always wanted to know, Richie. I know how we dieted in the 90s and early 2000s, but what did you guys do? Like, where did that change? Because that had something to do with the body, you know, you getting the ripped glutes and everything, because I'm sure your diet had to be different than the diet that Arnold and the bodybuilders were doing before you came along. So share with us about, like, you know, your nutritional program. How many calories were you taking? How many times were you eating a day? Stuff like that.
Well, like when I moved to California, I was just trying to bulk up, and you know, I told you I got up to like 265 eating, you know, burgers and, you know, a jar of peanut butter. I was just trying to put on weight. But you know, what I learned is, you know, I dieted for shows, and when I dieted before, and we talked about how Arnold Arnold would go on a keto diet. He'd go on a low carb diet before a show. So he would, you know, go 0 carbs, all meats and water and vegetables, and diet in for a show. And whenever I tried that kind of diet, when I did a low carb diet, I would just shrink. So what I found was better for me. I found that I was going more with a balanced diet, complex carbohydrates. You know, I could eat a diet of, say, you know, 3,500 calories, you know, starting my diet, and go down to like 2,900 calories, but I would still eat, I'd say 40%, 45% protein, 55% carbs. And my carbs were all, you know, yams, sweet potatoes, brown rice, oatmeal. I ate a little bit of fruit, but very, very little. Proteins were very, very lean. You know, I didn't really eat, when I was dieting for shows, really that much red meat. Today, I should have probably ate a little bit more, but white fish, egg whites, turkey, chicken. That was my, you know, that was my diet. Fats came from, you know, the natural fats, but it was very, very low fat diet, very low.
How did you learn that? How did you learn that? Like, did somebody do your diet for you? You trial and error.
I just started reading books, and I started reading like Barry Sears, and I read different books, the Pritikin diet. I'd read all these different books, and what I would, you know, how, you know, to lose body fat. And I would take those and I would apply them to, you know, my bodybuilding. You know, a lot of guys like taking in gluten. I found that, you know, a lot of people are allergic to gluten. And when I was dieting, I would do experiments with my body. I would take in the same amount of carbs, and I would eat bread and pasta and see how those carbs would affect me. And I would see that when I was dieting, if I was dieting on bread and pasta, let's say I was still eating, say, I don't know, 300 or 400 grams of carbs. As soon as I switched it to like sweet potatoes, oatmeal, and rice, I got lean right away. I was like, why was that happening? I found out that it was the gluten that was making me hold, you know, water. So I when you asked me how I did it, I kind of just was very intrigued and experimented with my body and what worked best for me. And I always felt balanced diet worked best. I never did anything to extremes. I didn't do like low carb and then carb load before a show. I kind of just go into a show, carb up a little bit the last couple days, you know, bring down my protein, the last 2 days, like bring down my waters a little bit, and I would just go into the show.
How many weeks did you dive for, Richie? When you say, well, I got the Olympia coming up.
About 12 weeks, I'd start 10 to 12
now,
weeks.
Ron, this is another thing I wanted to know, because like Arnold and those guys, they didn't do cardio. So Richie, was it your that brought in doing cardio? Is that how you got the ripped glutes or what?
Actually, I didn't do any cardio as well.
Love it. Love it.
when I was my most ripped, when you're talking about the final count and all that, I didn't do any cardio because I trained, I did a lot of drop set, supersets, giant sets. When I was training for a show, I would do, higher reps, and I would decrease my in-between reps to speed. And that was enough for me to get really lean. I did start doing cardio towards the end of my career, and I just didn't feel like it did anything for me to actually maybe lose more muscle than anything. I think if you train hard enough, you don't need to do cardio.
Like if you look at pictures of Rich when he was a teenager, Kevin, the conditioning was at a very high level already. I saw pictures. I remember I used to work for Elssbiay, and I saw pictures. Was a show I think called the American Cup that you won, Rich?
Oh yeah, with Elssbiay, yeah.
And you probably like 18 in there, and there's a stack of pictures of you in this file. I was like, oh my god, this kid is shredded.
Well, see, the thing with Richie, I've seen Richie. I mean, Richie, you're. I mean, look, I'm Italian. My father's Italian, but I have a flat ass. Okay, genetically, I don't have a round ass like you do. Oh, so God. Genetically, you were gifted in that area, and you had those glutes. They just popped out when you got lean. For me, I saw your glute. I had to work my ass off on a step mill. I mean, I was on that thing for freaking hours, 12, 11 weeks. Yeah, just trying to get ripped glutes, man. So you were blessed in that area.
Oh, Rich worked his glutes. Weren't you one of the first male bodybuilders to do that?
Actually, when I was training for shows, nobody really did walk-in lunges. Right. It was an exercise more for girls. Yeah. And I learned, lunges from Corey Everson, because she would do it for her glutes. She'd do reverse lunges, forward lunges. And I started doing walking lunges. So, when I started training legs, I was like, your glute is a muscle like your legs. So you should train them. And I mean, and you normally would only get glute training from squats. I started doing reverse lunges, front lunges, walking lunges. I would do all those exercises. And I remember training for a show, and people were like, why are you doing lunges? That's a girl exercise. So it did help me develop my glutes. And it was funny because the first show was was in '86 when I got myself in really great condition. I was in the gym, and we had this posing room, and the gym owner is like, you go in there in your underwear and you're posing, and the guy goes like, holy shit, your ass is ripped. And then you didn't really wear those. It's another thing that contributed to the sport is back then, if you look at the classic physique trunks, that's the way trunks used to look. So what happened was I was good friends with CJ. That's how long I known her. I said, hey, CJ, can you cut my trunks so that you can see my glutes? So she's cut my trunks so that they came in so you can see my glutes. And then I had to put this like glue to hold them on because they would go into my ass. So I was the first to really cut my trunks like that to show off, my glutes. So what I did is I went and I did a back shot, and normally it's like for a Christmas tree, but when I squeezed it out, you could see like my glutes pop.
Did you get any heat from the judges or anything when you first did that because you changed the whole style of the trunks? You made them smaller.
No, I mean, they didn't say anything. They were really they couldn't believe the conditioning I was in, and I was able to look like that. And I remember that show was the Pro World. It was before the Arnold Classic, and I came in that show so shredded. And the favorite to win that show was Mike Christian, because he was like 6'2", big back. And I went into that show just ultra shredded, and I got first place every judge and won that show because no one ever got in that condition in a show. It was the first time that, someone was full and ripped like that to look like that.
A lot of people think you ruined it for everybody because there's a lot of guys it's, they would have to get so flat and scrawny looking to get the glutes in, where other people, it's not as tough. I don't know why, But now if your glutes aren't in, you can be shredded to the bone everywhere else. You could have cuts, you could stick your fingers in everywhere else. But if your glutes aren't in, you're off. You know, do you have, I don't know, you raise the bar just the way Dorian raised the bar with mass and everything, but
He did.
there's a lot of guys that probably wish you never showed those ripped glutes, because then it wouldn't be that. The standard wouldn't be that.
Because you understand is I showed that condition. So if I wasn't in that condition, I was actually, even if I was in better shape than the other competitors, they scored me lower because I wasn't in, you know, they call me Gaspari shredded. Right. I wasn't in shredded shape. So they would actually score me lower, which was messed up. But, yeah, it's cool that I contributed to that sport. And I think it made, you know, bodybuilders aware of training their glutes. You know, now men train glutes like crazy with hip thrusts and, you know, lunges. And that's when you go into another, you know, the whole women's sport has changed so much to now all they do is train glutes. That's
bikini is 100% glute training.
Well, it went from bikini now to wellness, which is just glutes and legs.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we do. And I was just, but Richie won the show. Richie was the first winner of the Arnold Classic.
Did you know he did it after didn't you tear your pec just like 4 months before that?
I was prepared for that show. I went into the Grand Prix tour that year, you know, going head to head with Labrada. And before that, I never lost to anyone but Lee Haney. So I was, you know, I was favored to win the whole Grand Prix with 7 shows. Well, I was surprised that, you know, I got beaten by the other Lee, by Lee Labrada. And you know, you've been to those Grand Prix. It's tough. You're going from place to place, and you're trying to keep that condition. But I was able to win 4 out of the 7 and come second in 3. But it was no matter what, it's like, I got to beat Lee Labrada. I got to beat him. That was you know, because he beat me I beat him in one show. Then the next show he beat me. And then he thought he was going to beat me in the rest of the shows. But then the other show I beat him, and we were going back and forth, back and forth. So then the last show was in Italy. And it's like, I got to beat him. I got to beat him. And I ended up winning. It was in Italy, you know, my home country, you know, and I won that show. But it was really excruciating because you prepare for the Olympia. And then it was 1 month, 7 shows and going into the Grand Prix. And then it was only was in March, the beginning of March, to go into that Arnold. I really didn't want to compete. I was going to take a break. But what happened was Arnold called me and he's like, you know, Richie, I want you to compete in the first Mr. Olympia. No, sorry, Arnold Classic. So he asked me to compete in that show. It was kind of cool because he flew me out to California. I went on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Wow.
They did a whole expose on me. Back then they had the Wide World of Sports. So they did this whole thing on my family, you know, so I was one of the favorites to win. They actually had Mike Christian in that you know, at the Jay Leno show, but he ended up bowing out, not competing. And the guy who came second to me was Robbie Robinson.
Wow.
Show.
How did it feel?
I tore my pec 2 weeks out from the show. I had a slight tear. I mean, it wasn't as bad as you had your tear, but you fixed it. I ended up like living with it, competing in the show. You couldn't really see it as bad, but then when it healed, you can start seeing it more, which now I mean, I won the show and I regret that I didn't get it fixed right away, you know, because once you let it scar up, you can't fix it.
How did it feel, Rich, winning the Arnold Classic, the first Arnold Classic?
I mean, it was a great feeling because I went through all these shows and, you know, to go into that show and be the first winner, you know, they say you're always going to be the first winner, like Larry Scott being the first Mr. Olympia. I'm always known as the first Arnold Classic winner. I mean, it was a great feeling, but from that point, because I killed myself from all those shows, I have to say that I was like burnt out from that point.
I was going to say 89. You won the Arnold. You never won another. You won a bunch of shows leading up to that, including that, but you never won another show after that, right?
No, I got fourth. I got fourth in the Olympia, and that year, Vince Taylor beat me. We came in third, and Labrada got second in the Olympia. And it kind of just deflated me from that point. But I definitely think I started having issues with, you know, physically with my body, not being able to just get in shape, like I
Yeah.
did. And I think today I attribute it to having issues, spinal issues.
I mean, the
Well, it was
neck.
certainly,
Oh.
it was definitely your nerves because, I mean, you're at the peak of your career, and you're what, early 30s.
Yeah.
Guys nowadays is just getting started at early 30s. So
No,
yeah, definitely.
And I know my dad, my sister, my brother all have back issues. I mean, and I'm pretty good, but they have all, herniated disc and problems, and they don't even train like this. So, the doctor said it was more something that you had genetically. I mean, I'm happy and I'm grateful that today I'm walking.
Yeah.
I still feel healthy. I see guys like Ronnie who put his body to the brink, and and he's a year younger than me, and being in the shape he's in now.
Yeah.
He doesn't regret it, but it's hard to be like that after
Yeah.
being great.
You look good, Rich. Rich, what is your age, if you don't mind me asking?
57.
You're young, man. What month is your birthday?
Coming up May 16th.
Yeah.
I'm still, well, when I was competing, it was funny because now, Levrone is like 61, and I think Lee Haney's like 62. I was one of the younger competitors, in the show at the time. I know like Mike Christian's now like 65, 66.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are much older. Shoot, Albert Beckles. This was what's really amazing. Albert Beckles, when he came in second in the Olympia, when I came in third to him, he was 55 years old in that show.
Wow.
Wow. What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And he came second in that show. And here's what's even more amazing. He won a show at 60. He won the Niagara Falls. I think he was like 61. Yeah. I don't know, maybe Ronnie, but he won a show in his 60s.
His age has always been up for debate, like, because no one's ever seen a birth certificate or anything. So
he probably made himself older now, right? He probably
I know.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Richie, you make this enormous name for yourself, and you didn't just get stagnant in the sport of bodybuilding. You took it to another level, with giving back, providing a platform for so many athletes to make a living with Gaspari nutrition, your thoughts and your ideas, all that experience that you've gained and knowledge through the bodybuilding career, through, just traveling around the world. You took that, you dumped it into, your nutritional company, and you created that. Moving forward, I remember sitting there watching you on the stage. Arnold presented you with, I think it was a Lifetime Achievement Award. Which it blew all of us away and made all of us so proud of you, man. And where you just came through, never forgot where you came from, and you always gave it back, man. So, me personally, I want to thank you personally for being there for me, with my supplement company and ideas and everything. You just always been there for so many of us, man, and giving back. You still continue to move forward in that area, with your nutritional thoughts and ideas. And we were talking the other day about now where you are with that we're older, and the ideas of supplementation. Where do you think it's going to go now? And now that we're older, tell us a little bit about like what you have going on now with Gaspari Nutrition and your ideas with these products that you're coming up with at this time where you are.
I've been doing this now. Thank you, first of all.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
Grateful, and I always look at you as like just like me. We're both legends in the sport, and you've been able to give back to this sport as well, and the accomplishments that you've done. And you're one of the uncrowned Mr. Olympias that I've always said that should have won. And
thank you.
But with myself, with Gaspari Nutrition, I've been doing it for so many years, and I've had ups and downs. Like, this company's still standing. I've had points of, going into bankruptcy and then losing my company, getting it back. Right now, we're on a growth spurt. It's been amazing because since the pandemic, I changed my whole marketing outlook and did everything direct to consumer online. And I just grew the hell out of my business on a point where, direct to consumer and less through distribution. And it's really changed what we've done. And I'm actually having fun again, building this company up. I've come up with a new pre-workout, Super Pump Aggression. I redid, my Size On product. I've come up with a bunch of health products. I have omega-3, greens and reds, bone broth, a lot of different products that I believe are health driven. And I think bodybuilders should also look at the health aspects. When I started nutrition, it was more just for sport, pre-workouts, creatines, glutamine, only stuff for bodybuilding. And then I started seeing that I'm more into the health part of it. So what you said is, where do I go from here? I'm going to continue growing Gaspari, but I've actually made another company that we're going to start. It's going to happen around end of May. It's Gaspari Ageless. Gaspari Ageless.
That's the one that we were talking about.
Is
very interesting. Share us a little bit about that, Rich.
So it's going to be an anti-aging brand. It's going to be products for guys. I'm not going to say all my age or our age and our 50, but guys from 40. You start aging from 35, 40 is when you start aging. You don't see it as much at 35, but from 40 on is when you start to show the aging process. And I want to come up with products to help slow down that, or at least make you be able to continue, say, training or looking good. Some of the products I came up with, I'm coming up with nootropics for the brain. As we age, your brain becomes fuzzy. So there's certain nutrients that you can take to help your brain, think better, have better memory. So I'm coming up with a product for their natural testosterone booster I came up with. As we age, a lot of problems are in inflammation. Your body inflames and causes issues. We feel the pain in our joints. But this product I'm making is all natural. It's going to help also, you have problems with your heart. You have problems with cancer. All these things happen through inflammation. So I develop an anti-inflammation product. We're doing collagen products, that are going to help for your hair, skin, nails, ligaments, tendons. Coming up with a heart product. The most important muscle is your heart, your heart muscle. So we're coming up with a product for that, a prostate care. Unfortunately, when you get in your 50s, you start having problems with your prostate. So that's an area that, that I'm looking into in developing. So this is a totally different demographic we're going after. Like I said, it's going to be from 40 to 70 that are going to use this brand. And it's all products that I'm looking at now. As I age, I'm not looking for products to get big. I'm looking for products to stay healthy. I'm looking
stay alive and healthy.
To stay alive and look good.
Right.
So, and that's what this brand is about. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
excited to start it. And, I've been successful with a name that's been in the industry for, 22 years, and I've been in the industry for over 35 years. So it's exciting for me to start something different and new.
I'd like to give you an idea.
Okay.
I mean, you probably can take it and run with it. Seriously, man, I went, Ron, and I had my calcium, because your veins, we build up calcium, around the heart and stuff.
Yeah.
And I went and I took the scan and everything, and it came back a little, there was slightly calcium deposits built up in my arteries and stuff.
What was the number?
And I don't know the number. It just scared the shit out of me and made me change everything.
Really?
And I was like, and then I started looking into it. But, like for me, I would always, I like chips and dips and pizza and all this stuff. And, it wasn't super high, but it was like on the age of a 50-year-old man. And the doctor was like, look, Kevin, I didn't expect it to be like this because you've been working out and training all your life. So just because you look healthy doesn't mean you're right. There's a lot of shit going on inside of our bodies where people's, genetically are just wired different ways. And I had those slight deposit build up, calcium buildups around my heart. So if there's and I switched, I went to garlic and, all these, I got online and started doing my research. But if there's a product that you can come up with, Rich, that would support that, to get rid of the calcium deposits,
Actually, the heart health product is good. It looks at the calcium deposits.
Yeah.
Helps blood flow. It's got antioxidants to help the heart, become more healthy. So
right.
And like we said, without that healthy heart, you have nothing. Without
you don't, man.
Yeah, you could have all the muscle in the world. I interviewed guys like C.T. Fletcher. The guy was a monster, but he had a bad heart. And he had a heart transplant, and thank God he's still, he's still alive, but your heart is the most important muscle in your body.
It really is. Yeah. When you come out with those products, man, I told you, I definitely want some.
Cool. We'll set you up.
I have to go back to the competing stuff because people are going to go, why didn't you ask about this or that? So, Rich, you were runner-up to Lee Haney 3 years in a row, 86, 87, 88. You brought different looks to each one of those 3 Olympias. Which one of those looks was your favorite and you think you were closest to beating Lee?
What's funny is I like my condition, or I like my shape in 87 because that was my biggest. I was hitting about 226, 227 in that show.
Yep.
But then what happened was the judges told me I needed to get my waist down. And, I think if I would have competed at that weight, and I think I could have even gotten bigger to get into the 230s, 235. But that's what I thought. I had size, I had great mass on my delts. And, I looked a lot bigger, and massive in that show.
I've told you this, Rich, but Kevin doesn't know. I had only one Mr. Olympia on tape. It was that Olympia, 87 Olympia from Gothenburg. I used to play Rich's routine because I remember the blue blocks in back of the backdrop to the stage was this, blue with the shoulders. He did this hands-on hip most muscular. And that, Rich, your shoulders were the biggest ever, I think, at that particular show. They're like cannonballs. It was nuts. And veins. And my God, I was like, dude, that's what I need to look like that dude.
Well, that's what I said. I was more impressive in that show. I was a little less, not as ripped, but I was impressive, in the way I was still hard as hell, but I just wasn't that ultra shredded look. And I felt that was the condition I should be in. But then they said, if I look like that in the next Olympia, they were going to place me lower. And I'm like, why? I was trying to beat Lee because he was so much bigger. I was trying to beat him at being big. I was going to be shorter, but I guess it, didn't work. And then 88, I came in great condition, shredded. I think I needed to come in that condition in 88 because that year, a lot of guys came in really great condition in that show.
Yeah.
Barry.
Hey, Rich.
What's that?
Here you go.
Oh, you got the song.
What's he putting on? The final countdown?
The final countdown.
Oh, gosh. Kevin, did you know Rich posed at I think it was when you won the Arnold? There was a song that your brother wrote and composed for you?
It was actually the Olympia. My brother wrote a song called Destiny. So, and basically, he's a musician, but he was inspired by my drive and, my motivation. So he wrote a song, that was called Destiny. And they actually used it in the Mr. Olympia. After I retired, they used it in Mr. Olympia a couple of years after, and then they came up with that Olympia song, the song they came up with.
Joe Weider's Olympia.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Hey, Rich, does this bring back memories?
You hear it.
Maybe if you hear it.
What is it?
It's the final countdown. It's very faint.
Yeah, it is.
What's funny about that song is that's the song. It's the band is Europe, and they come from Europe. So when I was, I found that song. I was like, nobody's going to use this because it's from Europe. I forgot about all the European competitors. So I go out there and Barry DeMay used the song, and then another guy used the song. It was like 3 people used that same song in that show.
Man.
But everyone knew I used it that year.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Richie, man, it's been an honor having you on the show, man. And I want to thank you so much, man, for coming on. And I can't thank you enough, brother. You're just an incredible human being, and your driving force and everything. Been a role model for all of us, man, like I said. And there's just no stopping you, brother. I appreciate everything you've done for us all. Appreciate you coming on, and I'll say thank you very much.
No, thank you. You're gonna repay me. You're gonna come on my show.
I have to echo the same thing. Rich, you were my first inspiration, first bodybuilder I ever saw that I just made me want to go lift weights. Geez, And then, you know, I was lucky enough to work for you with your company for a long time too, and get to know you. It's so great that you were so relevant 35 years ago. And here we are in 2021. You're
Yeah,
still a
man.
very, very major, vital part of this industry. So, you know, thanks for everything.
Thank you guys. And it's great to be on the show.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much, Rich. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Episode number 11, MD Levrone Report. Kevin Levrone, Rich Gaspari with Ron Harris. We're out of here, guys. Peace. One love.